Elena Voss had learned, a long time ago, that being useful was safer than being loved. In the Silverback Pack, love was for wolves, with clean family names and easy smiles. Elena had neither. Her father had been beta once, before an old scandal stripped him of rank and left his daughters to grow up under a cloud that never fully cleared. So Elena became the healer instead. She learned the names of every herb in the northern woods, the exact pressure to close a wound, the right words to calm a frightened wolf mid-shift. She made herself needed, because she could not make herself chosen. 3 years ago, she had felt the mate bond snap into place the night she first met Alpha Damian Cole. She would never forget the way his eyes had found hers across the training field, the way the whole pack had gone quiet, waiting for him to say the words that would make it real. He never said them. He looked at her, then looked away, and muttered something about timing, about pack politics, about needing to be careful. Elena told herself she understood. She kept healing his wolves, kept showing up, kept waiting for a claim that never came. Her younger sister, Bianca, understood something else entirely. Bianca was golden-haired, quick with a laugh, and utterly unafraid of wanting things out loud. While Elena mixed remedies in the quiet of the healing house, Bianca learned to sit beside Damian at council meetings, to bring him coffee before he asked for it, to remember the names of his favorite hunting trails. Elena watched it happen, and told herself it was harmless. Sisters could be close to the same people. It did not have to mean anything. She was wrong, though she would not learn how wrong for many months. The night everything broke apart was the night of the spring moon ceremony, when the whole pack gathered around the sacred bonding well to drink and renew their ties to one another and to the land. It was an old tradition, older than anyone could remember starting, and it mattered to the wolves in a way that was hard to explain to outsiders. That night, within an hour of the ceremony, a dozen wolves fell ill. Some collapsed where they stood. Others could not hold their shift, caught halfway between wolf and human, crying out in pain that no one could ease. Elena worked through the night with shaking hands, boiling roots, forcing fluids, doing everything her training had taught her. By morning, the sick wolves were stable, but the pack was frightened, and frightened wolves needed someone to blame. Bianca stood before the full council the next evening, her voice trembling in a way that looked, to anyone who did not know her well, like grief. She said she had seen Elena near the bonding well the night before the ceremony, crouched low, doing something with a pouch of dried herbs. She said she had not wanted to believe it. She said she loved her sister, and had prayed she was wrong. Elena stood in the same room, and felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. She said, plainly, that she had not gone near the well that night. She had been in the healing house preparing supplies for the ceremony, as she did every year. She had witnesses, she said. Ask the apprentice who had helped her grind bark until midnight. Ask anyone. No one asked. Damian sat at the head of the council table, his jaw tight, his eyes refusing to meet hers. When he finally spoke, his voice was flat and final, the voice of an alpha who had already decided. He said the pack could not afford uncertainty. He said trust, once broken, could not simply be argued back into place. He said, looking somewhere just past her shoulder, that he believed Bianca. He called her a liar in front of everyone she had spent 3 years serving. Then, in the same breath, as if the two decisions were one and the same, he turned to Bianca and named her his intended Luna, saying it was a choice long overdue, one he should have made from the start. Elena did not cry in that room. She would not give them that. She walked out with her spine straight, and her healer's satchel still slung over her shoulder, though it no longer meant anything, because by morning her title was stripped, and her rooms in the main lodge were reassigned. She was sent to a small cabin on the pack's border, the kind of place reserved for wolves the pack wanted to forget. For 2 days, Elena let herself grieve. She sat by the small window of the border cabin, and watched the tree line, and did not eat much, and did not sleep well. But grief, she found, made room for something else once it had worn itself thin. It made room for questions. Because something about that night did not sit right. Elena had spent 3 years learning every plant that grew within a day's walk of the territory. She knew what caused the wolves' collapse the moment she smelled the residue in their blood, though she had said nothing at the council, too stunned by her own accusation to press the point. The poison in their systems was not a wild plant that had drifted into the well by accident. It was a rare combining agent, something that had to be prepared with care, something that required knowledge most pack members did not have. Elena began, quietly, to remember things she had spent years choosing not to notice. Bianca slipping away from gatherings to take calls on a phone she guarded closely. A locked wooden chest under Bianca's bed that she had once caught a glimpse of and been waved away from with a laugh that came a half-second too late. The way Bianca always seemed to know things before the council announced them, small details about patrol routes and pack finances that should not have reached her ears. She thought too about Damien's mother, the previous Luna, who had vanished 5 years ago. The official story was that she had left to visit distant relatives and simply never returned. That grief over the old Alpha's death had made her wish to disappear. Elena had never questioned it before. Now she wondered why no one ever spoke her name anymore, and why Damien's father, before his death, had once looked at Bianca's family with something that was not quite warmth. There was an elder named Marta who had once served the old Luna directly, before she too fell out of favor, and was quietly pushed to the pack's edges, much as Elena had been. Elena walked 2 hours through the woods to find her, carrying a jar of healing salve as an excuse, and a heart full of questions as the real reason. Marta was old but sharp-eyed, and she did not pretend not to understand why Elena had come. She said she had been waiting, in a way, for someone to finally ask. What Marta told her, over tea that had gone cold between them, reshaped everything. The old Luna had not left willingly. She had grown suspicious of a young woman who had begun spending time in the pack's outer territories, meeting quietly with wolves who did not belong to Silverback at all, but to their rivals, the Ashwood pack. The old Luna had confronted her about it. Within a week, the old Luna was gone, and no one ever spoke of the confrontation again, because the young woman she had confronted was already, by then, close enough to the family that raising the matter further felt impossible. The young woman's name, Marta said gently, watching Elena's face for the moment understanding landed, was Bianca. Elena sat very still. Pieces that had never fit now clicked into place with a kind of terrible ease. Bianca had not stumbled into Damien's favor by accident. She had been building toward this for years, first easing out the one Luna who suspected her, then patiently positioning herself to become the next one. The poisoning of the bonding well was not a random tragedy. It was a strike meant to weaken the pack's strongest wolves ahead of something larger, something Elena did not yet have proof of but could feel coming the way she could feel a storm before the first cloud appeared. And Elena, quiet and easily dismissed, had been the perfect wolf to blame, because no one would think to question the sister who cried so convincingly. Marta gave her one more piece before she left. She still had letters, kept hidden for years out of fear, letters the old Luna had written to her in the weeks before she vanished, describing her growing suspicion of Bianca in her own hand. It was not everything, but it was a start. Elena spent the following days building her case the way she once built remedies, one careful ingredient at a time. She went back to her old records in the healing house, records no one had thought to remove because no one imagined she would dare return, and found her original notes on the poison's chemical signature, notes she had made the very night of the ceremony, before anyone had accused her of anything. She matched that signature against a sample she managed to draw, with trembling hands and a held breath, from the herbs still sitting untouched in Bianca's old training kit, left behind in a shared storage room from months before. They matched exactly. She had Marta's testimony. She had the old Luna's letters. She had her own medical records, dated and witnessed, showing that the residue on the suspicious herbs Bianca claimed to have found on her had been added after the fact, not before, since the compound only formed under conditions that occurred hours after the ceremony had already ended. She chose the mating ceremony itself as the moment to speak. It felt right, in a bitter kind of way, to let the truth arrive exactly where the lie had been rewarded. The pack hall was full that night, candles lit. The whole territory gathered to watch their alpha bind himself to his new Luna. Elena walked in wearing her old healer's satchel, the one symbol of who she truly was that no one had thought to take from her, because no one had thought she would ever wear it again. The room went silent in a way that felt different from the silence 3 years ago when the bond had first snapped into place. This silence was heavier, more uncertain. Damien's eyes found hers immediately, and for the first time since the council meeting, he did not look away. Elena did not shout. She did not need to. She spoke clearly and laid out what she had found, piece by piece, letter by letter, until the room was no longer looking at her with suspicion, but with growing horror directed elsewhere. When she reached the part about the matched poison signature, Bianca's composure finally cracked. She stepped forward, voice rising, insisting it was lies, insisting Elena had always been jealous, always resentful, always looking for a way to ruin what Bianca had built. But wolves cannot fully hide what their bodies know, especially not under the weight of fear and fury combined. As Bianca's anger spiked, her control slipped, and her shift began without her permission, her human shape blurring at the edges. When it settled, just for a moment, into something between forms, the whole pack caught the scent that clung to her, faint, but unmistakable to noses trained since birth, to know their own territory from any other. It was the scent of Ashwood land, worn into her like a second skin from years of crossing back and forth. No speech Elena could have given would have carried the weight of that single, involuntary moment. The pack did not need more convincing after that. Instinct, older than any council ruling, told them everything. Damien ordered Bianca detained before she could take another step. His voice, when he gave the command, did not sound like the voice of a man declaring victory. It sounded like a man watching the ground open beneath everything he thought he understood. He turned to Elena afterward, in front of everyone, and began to say her name, began to reach for the words that might undo 3 years of distance, and 1 terrible night of public shame in a single breath. Elena let him get halfway through before she raised a hand, gently, not unkindly, and stopped him. She told him that she was not angry anymore, not exactly. She was tired, in the way that comes after carrying something heavy for a very long time, and finally setting it down. She told him that trust was not a title he could hand back to her the same way he had taken her old one away, with a word spoken quickly in front of a room. It had to be earned again, slowly, the same way she had earned her place back through evidence and patience, rather than through anyone's permission. She resumed her role as healer that week, not because Damien restored it, but because the council voted to reinstate her, unanimously, once the truth had settled, and the fear had passed. Bianca was exiled from Silverback lands, handed over to face judgment for her years of quiet betrayal, and the pack began the long work of repairing what her presence had worn thin. Damien did not try to force his way back into Elena's life. Instead, in the months that followed, he showed up in small, steady ways. He listened in council meetings when she spoke instead of looking past her. He asked her opinion on matters that had nothing to do with healing, simply because he wanted to know what she thought. He did not rush her, and he did not expect gratitude for finally doing what he should have done from the beginning, which was to see her clearly. Elena watched him change, slowly, the way a wound closes when it is given time and proper care, instead of being rushed. She did not know yet if she would let the bond between them finally settle into what it was always meant to be, but for the first time in 3 years, she let herself imagine that it might, someday, on terms that were entirely her own.